that's a really interesting story where you kind of on accident found your voice. And is that you kind of had the light bulb go off where you're like, I'm just going to like lean into like what I have rather than keep aspiring to maybe just be what I see? Like, do you think that part of like wanting to keep going higher and belt louder, was that just because it was the skill that you did not have, or was part of it like there weren't many mainstream acts that had that lower voice? Was that part of it? Or
yeah. I think it's probably a combination between the two. So I call this nature versus nurture. So what I did here on the radio was belt, 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 high, high, high. And, Beyonce has a couple songs where it goes low, like Halo, for example. It goes really low in the beginning. And so there were some songs, some artists that were singing low, but it wasn't like Cher wasn't a thing anymore, right? Or just like an artist who just sits down there the whole time, or the majority of the time at least. So that's the nurture part, right? I was nurtured to do a certain style of singing because that's what I heard. And in my head, I thought that, okay, if I want to have a career in music and I want to be a singer in Hollywood, then that's what I need to do, right? That's where everyone's like, oh my gosh, she can sing so well, right? When they belt their faces off. And so that's the nurture part. But you cannot neglect the nature part of it, right? And the nature part of it is the voice that you were born with, your God-given talent, whatever it is you want to call it. It's you can't deny it. You just can't deny it, right? And we all have our strengths and our natural strengths, what we are born with. And that will always be so much more wow to your audience than any nurture part, right? Anything that you learned in addition to what you were given at birth, right? So the nurture part, for me, was belting and head voice sing high, right? The nature part was sing low. And so obviously it's important that we balance both. If we only use the nature part, then, you're going to be pretty limited, right? There's not much that you can do. I call this your prima voce, by the way, the sweet spot of your voice, the thing that you do the best, your strengths, essentially. That's your prima voce. It's an Italian term. And so,
I like it.
So, if you're only singing in your prima voce, you're pretty limited. And so that's where singing lessons come in, and the whole nurture part to, improve your vocal skills, to expand your range, to riff faster, and do all those things. But what I see very often, and which is also what happened to me for 10 years, is in singing lessons, the nature part can get lost, and you only do the nurture part, right? You only work on your weaknesses, and you kind of forget about your strengths, because at the end of the day, you take lessons because you want to get better at singing, right? But what about the thing that you already do well? That's your wow factor. That's the thing that's going to help you stand out from everybody else. That's the thing where everyone's going to be like, oh my God, who is this person? Right? Not the weaknesses that you worked on. And so now they're not that weak anymore. Now they sound better. But still, it's still not, your strength. It's just a weakness that you were working on. So that's the part of singing lessons that usually gets lost, which again, I can speak from personal experience. It's what happened to me for more than 10 years. And no voice coach ever talked to me about that part of my voice. And, I took lessons with 12 or 15 different coaches over the years. And so that's why the lessons that I teach now and that my team teaches, we focus on your prima voce. We focus on figuring out what is your strength. And how can we make that stand out even more? How can we make the strong parts of your voice even stronger before we dig into the weaknesses of your voice at all?